Hey, Drew here, and I'm going to nitpick this episode to death once more. No, I'm just kidding. I have positive things to say, I promise. But I really enjoyed this episode. I'm going to start sounding stupid if I keep saying, oh, this was the best episode yet. No, this one was the best episode yet. But I really do feel that all three of the last episodes, at the time I watched them, I thought, man, this is the best episode so far this season. And this episode, I feel like, may not be everyone's favorite episode. I think that, the previous two episodes had a lot more action-y moments, a little bit more horror that's, I think, populist horror. But this episode was a little bit more feel-bad horror, a little bit more devastating in its character moments. So to me, that was more appealing. I feel that when people talk about this show, they always question, why isn't it more popular? Why isn't it like the next Game of Thrones? And I kind of understand why they're questioning that, because in a lot of ways, this is just excellent television. It's very cerebral. It has lots of great ideas, good acting, great music, great production values, so many interesting ideas at play. I think that the big thing that I wonder if it isn't holding it back is that it doesn't tap in to the primal a whole lot. Like, I think that for the most part, it gets so caught up in ideas and, abstract concepts of family and what, being human means, that it doesn't actually show you a whole lot of humanity. And this episode really rectified that, I think, in a big way, thanks in a large part to two just astounding performances by two very talented actresses, Neve Algrim and Jordan Laugrum. I think both these actresses really brought humanity to this episode that at times, from my perspective, has been lacking in this show. I definitely think that the standout moment of this episode for most people is going to be the fate of Neve Algrim's Sioux. I think that this moment was surprising, and at times people have said that this season is moving too quickly, and I kind of understand, because events like this, you would expect there to be more buildup. I really wasn't expecting a character death this episode. With 2 episodes left, I would have expected it, if it was going to happen in the finale. And perhaps she won't stay dead. I mean, you never know, but this seems pretty definitive to me. I mean, I don't know how you turn someone back from a tree. And again, so much of this, what made this devastating was just the really poignant performance by Neve Algrim, and the way that I think to a certain extent she seemed to have finally found a degree of peace in this episode. These moments that she has with Paul, where he's finally come to just accept her as his mother. Like, he can't distinguish between her and his original mother, poor child. And she's accepted this role and has accepted him as her surrogate son. And, you see how her identity has become, subsumed to that of her husband and her surrogate son, and to this religion that, she's come to accept. I felt like the development of this from last episode, that she went from being someone who was skeptical, like, well, maybe soul exists, but it's probably an alien, to someone who's just kind of going along with whatever soul wants. I felt like that could have used a little bit more development. It might have helped to make this seem more justified, because as it was, I questioned, why did she deserve this? What did she do that was worse than anyone else in the show in terms of allowing her beliefs to overtake, or allowing her, awe of this new seemingly religious figure, to overtake her personal identity and beliefs. So to me, that was questionable. And that it would have helped if they had just taken a little bit more time to develop her willingly losing her identity to this. But just the way that this all played out, it was so devastating. Again, her performance, Neve Algrim, so good. The way that she kind of had this jerky quality, where you just felt that, man, that's not how a human moves. It seemed like she was out of control of her body. And I don't know if they enhanced that with CGI or if it was all her, but it was really well done in any case. But the facial expressions that you could see the dawning recognition in her eyes, and the horror that she wasn't in control, and that last scream that the director described how he told her, scream as if this is the last scream you're ever gonna have. And for all intents and purposes, it seems that it is. So just really, really devastating stuff. And I really appreciated the way they didn't dump a whole lot of exposition on us as this all was happening. They just kind of let it play out and assumed that we'd be able to figure it out. And the directing was so clear and edited so well that it was really obvious what we were supposed to be picking up as happening. It wasn't confusing at all to me. I think that the realization hit me as it hit the characters. As Paul is calling for his mother, at first you see him excited that this tree has grown from this seed that opened after Sioux sang praise to Soul. And then you see him slowly stop calling his mother, and his face go from kind of excited to, wait a second, and the dawning recognition once again. And then just Travis Finnell, again, I singled out the two actresses I mentioned previously for praise, but he has been a constant, just a joy to watch on this show, such a charismatic performer. And the way that he plays this scene, his character can get so wrapped up in zealotry and in trying to persuade people of his point of view that he doesn't always get to play the human moments. But just this dawning grief in his eyes as he realizes what has come to pass, and that final shot of him with his hand on the tree, just excellent, very well done. We still don't know what Soul is. Obviously, it doesn't seem very likely that it's a deity in this universe, but the way that this played out, I would be very, very skeptical of eating any fruit from this tree, because the fact that this seed turned her into a tree, I have suspicions about this. It's also obviously metaphorical, bringing to mind, evoking the Garden of Eden and the tree of knowledge and good of evil perhaps. So how this plays out, what it happens, there's gonna be something bad. Soul does not seem to have the best interests of people at heart. He may help them for a little while, but he's using them ultimately, it seems. But it is interesting because the seed opened when Sioux started to sing that song praising Soul, as I mentioned. So whatever this being is, it does seem to be actually Soul, which is kind of interesting. Whatever it is the creature, it is what people have been worshiping, which I find pretty interesting. Or why else would the seed have opened when she sang that song? I'm open to other theories, obviously. Let me know in the comments. The other thing that really, really stood out to me this episode was obviously the moment with Tempest. And the way that this all was set up, it was very Jungian. She took her journey into the wilderness, faced death, and then came back. And what this is going to change in her remains to be seen. I think so much of this plot line I could have found frustrating, and I'm sure some people will, but I think what kept me from really feeling frustrated with the character, despite the fact that she made some dumb decisions, was that Jordan Laugrum really, really just brought the humanity of the character to the surface in a really nuanced way. I've not really thought this before watching this show, but after this episode, I want to see more of Tempest. I would like this character to have a bigger role in this show. And I would love for Jordan Laugrum to get more work going forward. I think she was just very fierce in this performance, and really, really just selling the moment, really, really bringing the primal feelings that this character was going through to the surface, and the humanity of it. And you see in this conversation between her and Mother, Mother essentially says that, the reason we're keeping an eye on you is because humans have a way of either trauma, can help them to grow stronger, or they kind of retreat from it and, dull their pain and become weaker. And you see, Tempest really struggling with that this episode, just not knowing how to react to this thing that has happened to her. And you wonder what would have happened if Mother had placed more emphasis on her and her needs as opposed to the life that hasn't been born yet, if she had, also taken into account Tempest and what Tempest was going through a little bit better. It's interesting, there was a moment earlier this episode where Mother essentially says, we're failing our children because we're being too human. Our foibles, our flaws are making us bad parents. And obviously, I think most people who watch this show are going to be inclined to think the opposite, that as the androids are more able to relate to their children in their frailty, in their weakness, they'll be better parents. Obviously, that was kind of the problem with the Trust, was that it didn't recognize the weaknesses of humans. It didn't recognize their basic needs, and it just kept pushing them too far and not, valuing their lives. So the fact that Mother is viewing this as a weakness in her and father when it is actually one of their strengths, I think it's really interesting. It's a really interesting debate to see play out. You also kind of saw this in this moment where she's, still trying to puff up Paul as, she's still trying to pump up Campion as this leader, and she takes him to, try and inspire the group and, kind of show how, hey, look, we're taking care of your needs. We care about you. But the fact that he was raised by these androids, a lot of the time, the explanation of how the characters act more like androids than humans isn't really brought out. But this was a funny moment because you could just see Father in the way that he was like, how about a joke? And then he told a joke that sounded like something Father would say. He probably heard it from Father, honestly. So you've got all that going on with Mother and this debate about whether, being more human makes you a better parent or being more objective makes you a better parent. And, this climaxes in Tempest fleeing and having her journey into the wilderness to, have this baby. And it's kind of unclear what she wants to be the outcome of this, whether she can't stand to see this child because of what happened to her and how this child was first created. But, she has this moment where she's, just fiercely going through this, just all the horror and all the beauty of childbirth. And just the way that Jordan acted this scene was just fantastic. I really, really got swept up in the moment. I mean, there were a lot of technical elements that enhanced this scene, the crashing of the waves, kind of symbolically showing, how Jordan must be feeling on the how Tempest must be feeling on the inside, kind of a literal tempest going on outside to match the tempest in her soul. And also just the way that the music was swelling and the close-ups on her face, the beautiful cinematography. It was all really, really well done. But I don't think it would have worked without this incredible performance by Jordan Laugram, which I don't think I can praise enough. I do question the outcome of this sequence, the fact that, one of the devolved humans from the acidic waters came up and took the baby. I feel like clearly they're going somewhere with this. The baby seems like it's still alive, and perhaps they're going to explore, whether if it becomes a devolved human, can Tempest still have affection for this child? Or, will, she come to view it as a monster? So, I'll give them a lot of leeway with this, but I feel like I always feel, and this is my opinion for what it is worth, I always feel you have to be really careful with this kind of thing. You have to really know why you're including something horrific like the death of a baby in a story. And, to me, it almost felt like they could be going too far with this. We'll have to wait and see. But I do want them to have a very, very good reason if they're going to go in that direction. But otherwise, this episode, we got to see a little bit more of Grandmother. Clearly, we hear her speak for the first time. We learn that, initially she can only speak the ancient Mithraic tongue. And she has this veil, and she's questioning why the others don't have a veil. So it seems like they're going for that this character is going to be some kind of fundamentalist character, perhaps. But the dynamic between her and the other characters is yet to really materialize. It's still unclear what this character is going to mean for the other characters. There's a lot going on here, but it's not really clear where they're taking things. But it seems like it's going to be pretty interesting. I did find the performance of Selena Jones, this relatively new actress. Apparently this is her first new major role. Pretty intriguing. We haven't even gotten to see her face yet, but I'm pretty intrigued by her voice and just the delivery of her lines. I'm interested to see what they're going to do with this character. So really, I enjoyed this episode. I thought there were, two emotionally devastating things in the same episode, which really impressed me. I was really impressed by the performances and just how not a moment was wasted. So let me know what you thought in the comments. Let me know your theories and what you think is going to come next for this series. If you're interested in seeing my upcoming reviews of the last 2 episodes of Raised by Wolves and of other shows, I know I'm not producing as much lately. I just have a lot going on, but I will produce more eventually. But please consider subscribing to the channel so you don't miss any of these videos. And as always, thank you so much for watching.